Well, hello everyone. Welcome to a breaking news edition of the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, like us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast, Instagram, podcast_hockey, or subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And it's a breaking news day because Tyler Toffoli has been acquired by the Vancouver Canucks, as we are 1 week away from the trade deadline, February 24th. The 27-year-old has spent 8 years with the Kings, and his last game as a King will always be a memorable one, as he scored all 3 goals at the Stadium Series game on Saturday against the Colorado Avalanche in a 3-1 win. And he won a Stanley Cup in 2014 with the Los Angeles Kings. And he is coming to Vancouver in a trade that involves Tim Schaller going the other way, as well as a second-round pick and forward prospect Tyler Madden. The Kings will also acquire an additional fourth-round pick if Toffoli re-signs with Vancouver in the offseason. He is an unrestricted free agent. And so I'm here by myself, but I'm just going to give a quick reaction here on the trade. I will give this a perspective here from the Canucks, and I'll also talk about this from the Flames perspective as well here, just to add that into it. So as I was around 5 o'clock Vancouver time, I was taking some pictures and doing some shooting for a project that I'm working on at school when I learned of this trade. Ended up on my way home here, and have learned a few other things. So my reaction when I first heard this trade was, my first thought on this from the Vancouver Canucks perspective was about Michael Ferland, and he had obviously it was a bit of a rough weekend. He went down to Utica. He had for conditioning. He left the game because concussion symptoms, and the Canucks announced on Twitter that Michael Ferland is done for the year, and which made sense from that perspective that Tyler Toffoli would come in. It would be a nice replacement for Michael Ferland, and I think from the Canucks perspective, there was an obvious need to fulfill whatever Michael Ferland was bringing, especially after the Sunday's game, where you had a situation where Pettersson was hit again by Jones from the Ducks, which had Tyler Myers jumping in to protect him. Although it was a clean hit, Josh Manson, who, by the way, just as a side note, I don't understand why he wasn't suspended or called for a third man in from jumping basically from BC Place, walking into the Rogers Arena, grabbing a couple of bags of popcorn, and then literally jumping into the play. It's a little ridiculous to me that he got a 4-minute penalty for that. Anyway, just a complete sidebar on that. But Manson jumped on Myers, and what Ferland added, and the expectation was what Ferland was going to add, was a bit of grit, a bit of toughness, a bit of agitarianism, a bit of a bit of the type of type of style that you're going to need in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And of course, we all remember Michael Ferland from the 2015 series between the Flames and the Canucks, and what Michael Ferland, the impact he had. And I think the Canucks, when they signed him, were hoping for that. Unfortunately, he's done for the year, and we don't know what the future holds for Michael Ferland, but all the best to him. In addition to this, the bigger news here as well, or as big a news, is Brock Boeser is going to be out for 3 weeks. There was hope in some cases that he was going to come back sooner rather than later, but he's out for 3 weeks. So that creates another bit of an issue in terms of depth on your right side. You have Jake Virtanen and Louis Eriksson, who you don't want on your second line. He's been doing a good job on the Bo Horvat line, but he's not a guy you want on the second line necessarily. So certainly Toffoli adds a little bit of that. So, and also down this stretch, as you look at the standings here in the Pacific Division, we see that it is tight. Again, of course, the Flames did win today, 6-4 over the Canucks, or the Ducks. So that's not good news for the Canucks. But the bigger significant thing, and you could argue probably who won the weekend, if you're into thinking who won the weekend, the Edmonton Oilers, without Connor McDavid, without Zach Kassian, swept the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes and have moved into first place in the Pacific Division. Now, of course, the Canucks had first place for a while, but the Oilers have taken it over, and we know, of course, with the way that the Pacific Division is going, it's not foregone conclusion who's going to finish where in the standings. But right now, it's a literal tie. Edmonton and Vegas are not tied for first right now. Vegas won today against the Washington Capitals. They're on a 3-game winning streak. And you have Vancouver in third at 69 points. And Calgary is sitting 1 point behind the Canucks in the first wild card position at 68. And Arizona, who won today, is also at 68 points. So it's a very logged jam, again, division here in the Pacific Division. So this, you need, for the Canucks, you do need to pick up something to at least pick the replacement of Michael Ferland and pick up at least some depth to help you down at least a stretch. I also think that one of the things that a couple of things has not been talked about too much here. I want to bring in the Oilers into this perspective because I think looking at these matchups here, I think, I don't know, I could see this division ending up being the top three being Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver. That's sort of what I'm seeing right now, which means we're possibly looking at a Vancouver-Vegas series. And if Brock Besser is back, I like this top 9 for the Canucks at this point, with Pettersson, Miller, Besser, Horvat, Pearson, Toffoli, and you got Gaudette, Virtanen, and Roussel as your top 9. I would put that top 9 against the other two, anyone in this Pacific Division's top 9. I wouldn't be opposed to the Canucks on that. And especially in the bottom 6, where I think something that has been a little bit understated here from the Oilers' perspective has been the acquisition of a guy like Josh Archibald. I don't think we've been talking enough about Josh Archibald and the significance of his play with the Oilers, and Riley Sheehan as well. And some of the bottom 6 forwards in the Oilers, I think, make a need to pick up a Tyler Toffoli and improve the Canuck forward depth, even if Ferland is healthy. Now, which I don't know if you make this trade if Ferland is healthy, but you certainly do need to improve your depth, especially going down the stretch. So, considering the matchup, I think getting this acquisition, getting this guy in your top 9, Tyler Toffoli, and your top 9 is significant. It's also significant that he has won a Stanley Cup in 2014 with the LA Kings. I do not think that should go unstated here. Knowing how to win, knowing what this other season, this so-called playoff season is going to be, and for a team that hasn't been, for a number of players that haven't been through this, is going to be a significant help. But Sean talked about this on our last recording here yesterday, on Sunday, that one of the things that has been lost is JT Miller has never missed the playoffs. Adding players that have playoff experience is never a bad thing. So I think from that perspective here, getting a Tyler Toffoli in the lineup, adding some grip, adding some energy, adding some depth, a guy that you could probably play with Pettersson, with Horvat, and Gaudette, and he could be a good fit all down the lineup depending on matchups, moving some players around, moving a Louis Eriksson back to the fourth line, that's a good thing. Now, the concern with this trade is on 2 levels. I don't think that Tim Schaller is necessarily a superb concern, although he's been a very valuable asset for the Canucks. I think you look at a guy like Tyler Madden and decide that Tyler Madden is more valuable than a Tim Schaller. So there you go. The second round pick is a bit interesting, which the potential is that the Canucks don't draft until the third round this year in a fairly deepish draft. Could be a bit concerning, a bit annoying, a bit interesting going forward that you're giving up a couple of draft picks. But you could counter that you're in good shape with prospects here, with Podkolzin, with Hoglander, with Cole Lind. Zach McEwen still will have something to say. There's a number of good prospects in this lineup that maybe it doesn't hurt as much, but that could be significant that you don't have the first two picks. That's an interesting dilemma. The other piece here is Tyler Madden, who is a pretty. Some people would have had him as a first round grade, is a guy that people are thinking is going to be a Hobey Baker nominee. A pretty significant prospect in Canuck land that is going the other way. And I think that there's a bit of, from Canucks perspective, there is a little bit of an eek that you're giving up a Tyler Madden. And I get that. I think that that's a concern. But here, I guess, comes down to the question, and I guess this is how you look at this trade one way or the other. Looking at the Western Conference, and as we look at St. Louis is in a slump here. They have lost 5 in a row. They are 2-6-2 in their last 10. Dallas is 6-2-2. They're catching up, and tied for first in the Central Division. But really, they're only 5 points ahead of the Canucks in the standings. Colorado, many have winning the West, is in third with 72, and quite probably there's a 50-50 chance that could be. I mean, depends on Arizona and depends on Calgary who ends up in the playoffs, if a Nashville gets in or a Winnipeg gets in. Is there a clear-cut favorite in the Western Conference to win this conference? St. Louis came from relatively nowhere to win the Cup last year. Is there an opportunity here for the Canucks to have a bigger playoff run than went one round? Is there an opportunity here that you didn't think was there before? Now, that doesn't mean that I think that you need to bare your cupboard to go for this one cup, but I do think it's telling to improve your situation as best as you can to at least try to go on a run. I think this Western Conference is a little bit more wide open than we give it credit for, and the possibility here for the Canucks to at least go to the Western Conference final is there. And so from a depth perspective, from a risk perspective, I think that this isn't a bad trade for the Canucks. I put a poll on my Twitter, and you can follow me at KEVOLE, asking if, grading from the Canucks perspective, what you thought of in terms of the give back, the price that the Canucks paid to get Tyler Toffoli. And right now, we have an interest. The number here is fair. 55% say fair, 36% too much, and 9% say a bargain. And I guess that's going to be the question about this. The wild card in this will be what happens with Tyler Madden from that perspective. So it's interesting from the Canucks perspective. I think it puts them in a good position going forward. 3 more weeks for Besser gives you till the middle of March, which means he can be ready for the playoffs. So you've got a pretty good top 9 there from the Canucks perspective, and I think matches up well with a Vegas. It could match up well with an Edmonton. in your next round, depending on what happens. So from that perspective, that is good. Now, I do want to talk about this from the Flames perspective, because is it my imagination? Calgary fans, let's bring the Calgary Flame fans in here. Is this another deal that we feel that Brad Treliving fell short on? We had the Jason Zucker situation that ended up in Pittsburgh. There was an expectation he was ending up in Calgary. That didn't happen. We had the offseason move of Nazem Kadri, who, to be fair to Brad Treliving, he did not waive his no trade clause, so that trade could not happen. We had the situation last trade deadline where he was in the running but did not get Mark Stone. And I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that Brad Treliving was in the running on this and didn't quite get this done. I don't know what you do here with Calgary. I'm on the position, I've already tweeted this, I think the Flames need to sell. But if you're a Flames fan, how frustrated are you that the Flames are not acquiring these players? Now, Joel Henderson put out a spitball, a theory, and I don't know if this is true or not. But again, he tweeted this, and Joel Henderson is a close follower of the Calgary Flames. So, I think it's interesting. I don't think that this thought is unrealistic. But the trade could have been Toffoli for a second-round pick, Tobias Reeder, Matthias Pettersson, and conditional fourth. And on his Twitter, 58% currently think that would have been a trade that the Flames could have made. Now, do I think that's as good as the package as what the Canucks gave? No. But it's interesting to see, again, that Brad Treliving doesn't seem to be able to close another deal. I do think that this is a bit of a concern if you're the Flames going forward. They can't seem to get this guy, and they have been looking for this right-hand shot, this right winger. It's been the bane of Brad Treliving's existence almost. Zucker, Toffoli, Stone, or getting that gritty forward that, like Kadri, Treliving hasn't been able to seem to acquire that. So this. And yes, there are other options out there for the Flames, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But you do have to wonder if Treliving can pull this trade off. Of course, he's been able to make significant deals before, but it feels a little bit like he's a little bit snake bitten right now. So have to wonder what's going on there. Just back quickly for the Canucks, are they done? I don't think so. I do think they probably need some defensive help. I possibly maybe a little bit more depth forward wouldn't hurt, but a veteran defenseman couldn't hurt them as well. So we'll have to see what happens. But let us know what you think. From the Canucks fans, are you happy with this trade? Or are you concerned about that? Flames fans, are you worried that Brad Treliving can't seem to get this trade done? Or does Treliving need to kind of think about selling? That's probably something that we will probably talk about a little bit more when we record next Sunday, talking about the possibility. We've been teasing this a little bit of looking at the Flames selling. It's a topic that we will cover on our next hockey podcast that we will record on Sunday, scheduled. But for now, follow us again, podcast_hockey. Like us on Facebook, The Hockey Podcast. Instagram, podcast_hockey. Follow Sean on Twitter, Beardy Canuck 03. Tyler is on Twitter at TNOBLE. Heidi's on Twitter, HEID. Amazeballs, AMAZEBALLS. Devin is GordHow09. And Chris is Schneids, SCHNEIDZ. And, of course, me, KEVOLE. Thanks for listening, and we will chat with you soon.